Now, this morning in my video log, I shall be discussing the political system in this country and how many people are perhaps becoming apathetic towards politics and are not going to be voting in the next election because the politicians in this country often will make these great claims. They won't give us a straight answer, and actually, a lot of promises they make don't materialise. I'll give you an example. Nick Clegg, Liberal Democrat, was a great fresh new face in politics, a big breakthrough, especially for the young people, more like a revolution more than anything for young people's hope. He gave them faith, and then he promised them that he was going to prioritise young people by lowering the tuition fees, by putting them first, by helping them get out of debt, and, the taxation policy that actually did come to fruition in the end. But a lot of these promises that he made didn't materialise. When they formed a coalition government, I understand that many concessions had to be made. There had to be a lot of compromises made to form a coalition government. He couldn't have his own way in everything. But I genuinely feel that a lot of politicians make these great claims and great promises to people, such as Tony Blair, a fantastic orator, told us New Labour was going to be the start of hope and prosperity and auspice in this country. And he did exactly the opposite. He sent us into a futile war based on false pretences, leading us to believe that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, when in actual fact it was based on a student dossier. That's why we went into war of Iraq. The real war that we should have been pursuing was the war with Al-Qaeda after September the 11th. Although that was America's war, Osama bin Laden was the great international threat across the world, not Saddam Hussein. And we assassinated a man who was totally innocent, based on some kind of tenuous dossier back in 1991. He was completely innocent. Osama bin Laden, instead we spent 10 years actually not doing a huge amount to pursue Osama bin Laden. In the end, we managed to track him down. He could have been in a cave on his iPad for 10 years, as far as we know. We let that man run riot. The 7/7 bombings happened as a result of that. And I think that the politicians in this country have a lot to answer for, especially Gordon Brown. Of course, the recession caused by the bankers loaning vast amounts of money to people who wanted these loans, who the bankers knew jolly well they were never going to pay them back because they didn't have the money to do that. But then the Labour caused a complete and utter economic catastrophe in this country. Gordon Brown allowing the debt to rise to £1.3 trillion, not really communicating with his cabinet, Labour making a complete mess of this country's economic condition. And of course, in fairness to David Cameron, he was never going to be a popular Prime Minister, particularly George Osborne being the Chancellor, because they inherited a terrible, dire economic mess from the Labour government. So I have to actually cut them some slack. When we heard about the Conservative Party helping to tackle the deficit, it was never going to be easy. And everybody thought, oh my God, I'm hoping that the Conservative government are going to give us something different and something fresh and give us hope in this country. Well, it was never going to be like that for the first 2 years after David Cameron was elected in this country, because we had to make big compromises, resort to draconian measures in this country to tackle the deficit. There had to be tax increases. There had to be an unemployment rise, because quite frankly, there was not the work in this country, and many people became unemployed and were made redundant because the funding was not going into these businesses to thrive. But the heart and soul of this country are these graft, laborious companies and businesses who are the thriving point of this country, who are what makes this country what it is. And those are the people that we need to be prioritising in this country. Those are the people we need to be focusing on. And I think a lot of politicians actually will talk this great rhetoric and nothing will actually materialise in this country. So no wonder we're feeling so apathetic about it. If anything, the UK Independence Party is giving me the most hope and faith. Nigel Farage wants us to leave the European Union, wants us to leave the Union zone, the European zone, because we are spending £60 billion a year on excess money towards people on benefits. And of course, this is going straight from the taxpayer's pocket, people who cannot be bothered to work in many respects, not everybody. And I don't think, being part of the International Monetary Fund is doing us any favours either. We're spending far too much money on things we don't need. And I can understand why people are losing hope. Thank you.